Hey tubers, welcome back. For today's adventure, we're going to troubleshoot the electrical system on this 1996 300EX, Honda TRX300EX. Those of you who watch this channel regularly know that for $700 I picked up this thing and the tires over there. So there we go. First thing I did is I made sure it would start on my portable CDI box to make sure the engine was good, right? This was a non-runner because it would kind of stink. Well, it's about impossible to troubleshoot an electrical problem if you don't have an engine you could start up, right? It was a non-starting electrical problem. So that's the first thing I did. I wanted to make sure the engine was intact. Having done that, now it's a matter of what's wrong with this thing. I have a little bit of knowledge about these, and to be honest, you don't learn much about them, or you don't know much about them until you start troubleshooting. This thing has a double CDI situation. The bigger one appears to have all the stuff that goes into it to make it spark. And by that I mean you can follow the blue wire from the pulse generator into that. You could follow the wires out of the bigger one. They go to the coil. They seem to go to the kill switch and everything else. So you got that one. The smaller one seems to be doing a bunch of logical stuff. There's more wires going into it. None of the colors make sense. So let's just make it simple that way. Anyway, I started my troubleshooting in the back, realizing that I needed 12 volts to go here to make this whole thing run. So, you start back here and you hook one lead to the battery and you check, oh yeah, I got 12 volts. And then you check here, right, and I got 12 volts, and there's this extra wire that comes out of there and it goes through the fuse block. Got 12 volts, got 12 volts here, followed it, right? Next place to look is here, you got 12 volts. From here it goes to the switch. And sure enough, there was 12 volts going into the switch, and when you turn the switch on, there's 12 volts coming out of the switch. Then there's 12 volts going to the handlebars here. So after fooling around with all the 12 volts, and I said, okay, I have power. I probably have power to this guy. So what else could it be? They had this all apart. The engine was rebuilt, bored out, and so forth. So the next thing I started to look at was interlock type stuff. And it didn't come with the dashboard, but normally the way it works is, you can see that plug is the headlights, and these would go up to the dashboard. This bike has reverse. You see the little pull-up lever there, right? So these wires here would work the lights here, the one that says neutral and the one that says reverse. I messed around with reverse and neutral and all, and these wires weren't doing what I thought they should be doing. What they should be doing is you have hot lines coming to each neutral and reverse, right? And the wires that come out of the other side of the light bulbs go to the engine, and when you're in neutral, the neutral light ground is grounded, so it comes on, right? Because it's always got hot to it. And when you take it out of neutral, it becomes ungrounded. The reverse light, when you put it into reverse, becomes grounded, which turns the light on, and when you take it out of reverse, it becomes ungrounded, which now, though you have hot on one side of the light bulb, the other side of the light bulb is floating, so it doesn't light up. It has to be at ground for it to light up. So I kind of checked those wires out, and they weren't making sense up here. So next thing I did is I followed them from the case up here through here, and it's these two wires here that should be making those decisions for me. And I checked them out, and they just weren't making sense. So I unplugged them, tried to start it, and it wouldn't start. So then I unplugged, I plugged in the gray one and unplugged the green one, and sure enough, what I do with my wrench, my spark came back. And I could show you that because oh, got to turn it on, right, on, and then come on. So my spark came back. So I'm like, okay, this is good. And I know that some interesting stuff is going on with the interlocks. What is going on with the interlocks, I don't know. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not going to take the engine apart to figure that out, because I'm not a big one for any of that stuff, right? It doesn't have anything on the dashboard, and I'd figure out pretty quickly if I'm trying to start it in first or reverse. So there you go. Now, the second problem with this thing is if you hit the start button over here, the starter does not engage. Somebody has already been in here kind of poking around. You can see those holes on those wires. That's the starter button. And the black wire is 12 volts coming in, and the yellow and red wire comes over here and goes to the starter. So, with that, I unplugged these two wires, right? And you have a yellow and green, which goes to ground, which allows you to engage the starter. It would not allow you to engage the starter if you were in first or any other gear or reverse, right? It looks to make sure those wires are floating. And once again, it probably looks at that through all this logic here. Anyway, what I did is I hooked them directly up to the battery, and instead of having the starter button, I have this little button here. And if you turn, I'm basically looking at when I put 12 volts into the starting relay coil here. So and you could hear it kind of click. And it stopped clicking, but it's not engaging the starter. So I need to buy a new starting relay. As near as I could tell, though, you know, kind of monkeying around with the switch over here, everything seems to be working on it. So I wish I could tell you guys that, look, I fixed the electrical problem, you know, I found a loose wire or something along those lines. The only wire I did find loose, and I fixed it right up front, was this ground wire right here. It was not hooked to the frame. It was just float. I mean, it literally was like, you know, floating. So what I did was I took this off and I cleaned the frame, polished it up. They put theoretically, I'm going to use the word theoretically. They powder coat it. The frame looks like it was just painted. I think these were powder coated. I don't know if they were purchased powder coated or if they did the powder coating. But this is supposedly real powder coat. The frame just looks like it's painted black to me. Anyway, so if you want to get a good ground contact to the frame, you got to clear the powder coating or paint off of it, and I did that. I polished up the loop, the connector, and I made sure that there's a metal that goes through this to keep you from over tightening and crushing and breaking this off, breaking the plastic off. I made sure that was all clean. I made sure the bolt was clean, and you could see I put it on there. So that's the one thing I did do, but to be completely honest, that's not at all what fixed it. Messing with these two wires here fixed it. And once again, as I said before, these two wires go into the case, and they figure out if I'm in neutral or reverse. They control the two lights here, and they tell you if or not, if and when the starter should fire up, or if which one of these CDIs should work. One of these CDIs, I believe it is this one, is AC, and it's used for reverse, and it's extremely rev limited, so that you can't grab a hold of the throttle and launch yourself over the handlebars and get broken, right? Everybody worries about us hurting ourselves with these things. So so that's that one. This bigger one runs on the 12 volts, and it's rev limited to, I don't know, 5,500, 6,000, whatever they want the maximum RPMs of this engine to be. And it's meant for going forward. The AC one, rev limited for reverse. The bigger one, DC powered, and it's meant to go forward. So that's the troubleshooting. I seem to have gotten it running. I've learned, so to speak, that should the electrical problem come back, the first place I'm going to go would be those wires, and I know I'm going to unplug the light green one first, and I'm going to see if the spark comes back. If it does, obviously it has something to do with that. If it doesn't, and I mess with those wires for a while and it still doesn't come back, then I got to get back into troubleshooting what's going on. My experience, and just to help you guys out, for me, it seems that when a CDI goes bad, it goes bad. I've heard of some people say, well, it works fine until it gets hot, and then it starts acting up. Yeah, that might be true, and I'm not saying it's not, but generally speaking, for a cold start, I've not seen these things, no spark, no spark, no spark, and then suddenly spark, and then suddenly no spark. Given that, each time it's a cold start, that they haven't had a chance to heat up. And that's more or less been my experience with these spark coils also, where given once again it's cold out, that it won't start, suddenly it starts, you turn it off, and you come back an hour or two later when it's cold again, and it won't start. I've not had that happen. To me, most of they seem to be, when they go over the side for me, they seem to be, gone, kind of dead or alive, right? So that's my experience with those components. I have had stators kind of come and go, but once again, when this thing is running, it's running on the battery. It's not running, when you start it to go forward. It's running on the battery. It's not running on a stator. Pulse generators. For me, normally when a pulse generator goes bad, it goes bad open circuit, and it doesn't come and go. I've seen them go open circuit. One last thing about CDI units. For Honda CDI units, I rarely see them go bad. They do occasionally on the older stuff, like this is an 82. That's a long time ago. I've seen a few go bad on these. On the newer stuff, the Honda CDIs hold up well. The only bad thing is if you actually had to buy these CDIs, and they're not interchangeable, right? This one's got an extra wire coming out of it. They're not interchangeable. They're expensive. If I couldn't get it started on the OEM ignition system, I'd put something together myself, you know, maybe pop something like this into it just to make it interesting. All right, there we are. Anyway, I hope this helps some people troubleshoot. Remember, you start in the back, you make sure you got 12 volts all the way up to the front and all through the switches and all that wonderful stuff. Assuming you have that, start asking yourself what's going on with the engine interlocks. And what they are is from this side of the engine, it's these wires here. So I expected these wires, one of these to be shorted to ground for neutral, and one of these to be shorted to ground to for reverse. I was not getting that on these, so. But whatever they're doing now, it seems to be letting it start. So I'm gonna leave well enough alone. So there you go. All right, everyone, I want you to keep your feet down, keep your heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. You know, make sure you get out and have fun. If you enjoyed this video, love the thumbs up, love the subscriptions, love the comments. And if you didn't enjoy the video, you know, thumbs down and let me know why. All right, bye now.